Hey, Sip&Talkers. It's your host, Joe, and with me as always, Sunny.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, so anyone else notice the market's kind of freaking out lately?
Yeah, a little bit jumpy, huh?
Like someone spilled their coffee all over the place and everyone's trying not to step in it.
It seems like a lot of it's tied to those new Trump tariffs he dropped on April 2nd.
2025, everybody.
Yeah.
New year, same
old shenanigans.
Yeah, well, maybe not exactly the same.
Right. We're going to dive deep into all that today, try to make sense of it all, without having to get a PhD in economics.
Exactly. We want to keep it real for everyone listening.
We'll break down what these tariffs are really all about, how the markets reacted, like right off the bat, and what it all might mean looking ahead. For your wallet, for your 401k, for all that good stuff.
Yeah, because tariffs are kind of a big deal. They can make stuff more expensive, mess with people's jobs, even start trade wars. So we've been looking at news articles, market data, talking to experts, and even checking out what you guys are saying online.
It's like this weird tug of war, On one side, tariffs are like this classic move in trade talks. It's like saying, hey, you're not playing fair, so we're going to hit you where it hurts.
Right, like pay attention to us.
Exactly. But on the other hand, they can totally rock the boat. I mean, mess with the whole global economy, make people nervous about spending, and yeah, like you said, make everyday things more expensive.
And right now, it feels like Trump's team is betting that other countries are going to blink first under all that pressure.
And that other countries will make concessions quickly to avoid a trade war.
Speaking of weird stuff, did you see that thing about a tariff on penguins?
You're kidding, right?
No, I'm serious. I'm reading this article about global trade and suddenly, bam, penguin tax.
It's hilarious. It's like finding a random sock in your dryer that you know isn't yours.
Exactly. So apparently there's this super remote island, Heard Island, and McDonald Islands. It's basically just penguins and other wildlife, like nobody actually lives there.
Yeah, it's like way down south in the Indian Ocean.
Right near Antarctica. So why on earth are we putting a tariff on a place where nobody even lives?
Right. Well, we actually got some insight on that from the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. He did this YouTube interview, and he said it's all about preventing countries like China from getting around the tariffs.
Oh, so they're worried that China will, ship their stuff through these random places to avoid paying the tax.
Exactly. He wants to close every single loophole he can find. He even said something like, I can't let any part of the world be a place where China or other countries can ship through them.
Okay, I get the idea of trying to outsmart the cheaters, but penguins? Come on. It feels like they're using a sledgehammer to crack a nut.
Especially since there might be some funky data about trade with this island anyway.
Yeah, I think I saw something about that. What was it?
Well, the World Bank data shows that the U.S. supposedly imported like $1.4 million worth of machinery and electrical appliances from Heard Island and McDonald Islands back in 2022.
Wait, but nobody even lives there. How are they exporting machinery?
Exactly. It kind of makes you think that maybe the data is wrong. Maybe it's stuff from somewhere else that got mislabeled or something.
So we could be taxing imaginary penguin exports based on bad paperwork.
Pretty much. No wonder the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, was like, what the heck is going on? He even said, there's nowhere on earth safe from Trump's tariffs.
That's a pretty good quote.
It is. And all of this kind of brings us to the guy who's really the driving force behind these tariffs, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
All right, so what's his deal? Why is he so gung-ho about tariffs?
Well, he's been doing a lot of interviews and giving speeches and basically laying out his vision for how he thinks these tariffs are going to make America great again.
Okay, so hit us with the main points. What are his big arguments?
All right, so number one, he sees these tariffs as this massive tool to completely shake up global trade. He wants to basically reorder the whole system so that the U.S. gets better deals, American companies have more access to markets overseas, and it's just a more level playing field for everyone, or at least that's how he sees it.
Right. And I remember he talked a lot about rebuilding America. How do the tariffs fit into that?
That's a huge part of his argument. He says that by making imports more expensive, it'll force companies to bring their factories back to the U.S., and that means more jobs for Americans.
More jobs always sounds good.
Right. He specifically mentioned stuff like making medicine in America again, building more ships here, becoming less reliant on other countries.
I see. What about the money side of things? Does he think these tariffs will actually bring in more cash for the government?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's all about using tariffs to boost government revenue. He even pointed out that back in the day, tariffs used to be one of the main ways the U.S. government made money.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he says that extra money could be used to fund tax cuts or even create something called a sovereign wealth fund, which is like a big national savings account.
Okay, so it's not just about trade. It's also about how the government gets its money. Didn't he also mention something about national security?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He ties the tariffs directly to national security concerns. Like, he's super worried about the opioid crisis, and he says that tariffs can pressure countries like Canada and Mexico to tighten up their borders and stop fentanyl from coming into the U.S.
So he sees it as part of the war on drugs.
Exactly. And he's also concerned about the U.S. being too dependent on other countries for essential stuff like medicine ships, steel, aluminum, all that. You know, he's a big made in America guy.
Gotcha. So with all this talk about the good stuff, what does he say to people who are worried about the economy tanking, like a recession?
Well, what's really interesting is that he basically just dismisses those fears. He says the U.S. won't have a recession because of these tariffs, and his reasoning is that if other countries put high tariffs on U.S. goods, Trump will just slap them right back with the same high tariffs.
So it's like a tariff showdown.
Pretty much. And Lutnick seems to think that this whole back and forth will actually lead to lower tariffs overall in the long run and bring more wealth back to the U.S. He's even predicting a golden age for the American economy, with companies doing better and lower prices for consumers.
Wow, he's really painting a rosy picture.
Yeah, he's definitely optimistic. He even had some pretty strong quotes like, "The ripoff of the United States of America is over."
The ripoff of the United States of America is over.
He's got a knack for those sound bites. He also made it clear that these tariffs are here to stay, at least for a while. He said there is no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks.
Okay, so no backing down anytime soon.
Nope. He also doubled down on that whole penguin tariff logic, saying, "I can't let any part of the world be a place where China or other countries can ship through them."
So those penguins better watch out.
He also really believes in American workers. He said, American workers are more expensive, but they're better.
That's a good one for a campaign rally.
Right. He really sees all this leading to a boom in American manufacturing, with tons of new factories being built. He even said trillions of dollars of factories are going to be built in America. And he thinks this will make the U.S. the greatest economy on earth. All of these companies are going to come and build here.
So basically he thinks this is going to make America amazing again.
Pretty much. But, we got to remember that this is just one side of the story.
Right. There are always at least two sides.
Exactly. We're also hearing from a lot of economists who are super worried about all this. They're saying these tariffs could trigger trade wars where countries just keep slapping tariffs on each other's goods and it ends up hurting everyone.
That doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it's not. They're worried about higher prices for consumers' businesses struggling because of the extra costs and damage to the global economy as a whole. Like, some economists are even bringing up the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act from back in the 1930s.
Smoot-Hawley?
Yeah, it was this huge tariff bill that a lot of people think actually made the Great Depression even worse. So, yeah, there's definitely a strong argument against Lutnick's super optimistic view.
Right. It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Definitely not. And when you step back and look at it, it seems like Trump's team is playing a really risky game here.
Oh, so?
Well, they're putting a lot of pressure on other countries, hoping they'll cave in quickly. But what if they don't? What if they fight back? Or even team up against the U.S.?
Yeah, that could get messy.
It totally could. It's like that game theory concept of the game of chicken. Have you ever heard of that?
I think so. Isn't that where two cars drive straight at each other, and whoever swerves first is the chicken?
Exactly. And in this case, the cars are the economies of the U.S. and its trading partners, or even a whole global trade system.
I see. So if one side backs down quickly, they might avoid a crash, but they also kind of lose the game.
Exactly. Like if some country quickly gives in to the U.S.'s demands, they might be seen as weak, but they also avoid a potentially devastating trade war.
Yeah, it's a tough call.
Totally. The danger is that nobody swerves, and we end up with a head-on collision, a full-blown trade war that hurts everyone.
Ouch. What about that other game theory thing? The prisoner's dilemma. How does that play into this?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It basically shows how even if everyone acts in their own self-interest, it can lead to a worse outcome for everyone in the end.
Give us an example.
Okay, so imagine two countries, right? Each one thinks that putting tariffs on the other country's goods is the best way to protect their own industries.
Like to make their own stuff more competitive.
Exactly. So let's say country A puts tariffs on U.S. steel to help out their own steelmakers.
Okay, but then what happens?
Well, then the U.S. might get mad and retaliate by putting tariffs on country A's electronics.
I see where this is going.
Right. And then country A might put more tariffs on something else from the U.S., and it just keeps escalating.
Until everyone is paying more for everything.
Yep. And in the end, everybody loses because there's less trade overall and everything gets more expensive. It would have been better if they had just cooperated and not messed with tariffs in the first place.
Right. So instead of trying to outsmart each other, they should be working together to make trade fairer for everyone.
Exactly. That's the ideal situation anyway. But the big question right now is whether other countries are going to fold quickly, like Trump's team is hoping, or if they're going to stand their ground or even, team up against the U.S.
Yeah, if a bunch of countries form a united front against America, that could really throw a wrench in the whole plan.
Absolutely. That could be bad news for the U.S. economy. But on the flip side, if the U.S. manages to strike deals quickly, it could actually ease some of the economic worries.
Right. It's all about timing and strategy.
Totally. The longer this drags on, the more risk there is of things spiraling out of control.
So let's shift gears for a minute and talk about what you guys, our listeners, have been saying about all this. You always have such interesting takes and sometimes a pretty dark sense of humor.
I love reading the comments. It's always fascinating to see how people are reacting to these big economic events.
So one listener joked that Trump has basically turned into Thanos from the Avengers movies, snapping his fingers and wiping out half the value of global stock markets.
That's a pretty dramatic analogy.
Yeah, but kind of funny too.
I get it.
Another listener said they think these tariffs are like a compliance test to see which countries are the pushovers on the world stage.
Which kind of goes back to that whole aggressive negotiation tactic we were talking about.
Exactly. It's like he's testing the limits of other countries to see who's going to back down first.
Yeah, testing their resolve for sure.
Then there's this other comment that said the U.S. strategy is basically agree to talk our way or we all get wrecked.
Oof.
But they also said they think the U.S. will bounce back faster than everyone else, even if it means things get pretty bad in the short term.
That's a pretty bold prediction.
It is. And then we got some really interesting reactions from our listeners overseas. One person from China just wrote, American Daddy is awesome, with a question mark. I'm not sure if they were being sarcastic or genuinely surprised. It's hard to tell online sometimes.
Yeah, tone can get lost in translation.
Then we had a response from Taiwan that said, anything is better than that disgusting country.
Wow. Okay. Strong opinions there.
It just goes to show how much these policies are stirring up emotions all over the world. And just to be clear, we're sharing these comments to give you a sense of what people are saying, not to endorse any particular viewpoint.
Exactly. We're just trying to present a balanced perspective.
All right, so as we wrap things up, what are the key takeaways from this whole tariff deep dive?
Well, I think the main thing to remember is that these tariffs are a big deal. They're a deliberate attempt to reshape global trade in a way that the Trump administration thinks will benefit America.
And their goals are things like shrinking the trade deficit, bringing back manufacturing jobs, and boosting American industries, right?
Yeah, right. But these policies are already having a big impact on the markets, and there's a lot of uncertainty about what the long-term consequences will be.
Like, will it lead to higher prices for consumers? Will businesses struggle? Will it trigger a global recession?
Exactly. There's a lot at stake. And the administration's strategy seems to hinge on this idea of putting a ton of pressure on other countries to make concessions quickly.
They're basically betting that other countries will blink first.
Yep. But there's also a real risk of a stalemate where countries dig in their heels, retaliate with their own tariffs, and we end up in a full-blown trade war. And as we saw with that whole penguin tariff thing, the impact of these policies is pretty far-reaching.
So it's a really complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
Definitely. And it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
So hopefully now you guys have a better understanding of what's going on with these tariffs, the potential risks and benefits and the different perspectives people have about them.
We tried to cover all the bases.
We did our best. And here's something to ponder as you go about your day. What do you think is going to be the deciding factor in whether this whole tariff gamble pays off? Will it be the economic data, the political will of different countries, or maybe something totally unexpected? And will we see any other weird unintended consequences like taxing penguins on a deserted island?
Lots to think about for sure.
Definitely. And before we sign off, don't forget to check out our buddy Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. He's got great travel vlogs. He reviews all kinds of cool whiskeys and other drinks. And his background music playlists are top-notch.
He's got great taste.
He does, so go show him some love.
And we'll catch you guys next time on The Deep Dive.